Okay, Eric is there. Okay, we're going to give it 45 seconds and then we're going to begin. Why are you in my cave?
I'm trying to find my phone.
Oh. Guy has no privacy. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai.
Elohim
melech
melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah.
Okay, so my world is changing rapidly. I am now coming up on 3 podcast recordings. So I don't even know what that means, but I have it and it's on the calendar and that's going to happen. So that's good. Let me point out that Mitch Dorf will be here to sound shofar again. He did a great job last week. And I'm going to put him on whenever he shows up to help meet his calendar. So it'll be around 10 o'clock that Mitch Dorf will be here. Last night, we heard very, very unhappy news about Stacy Wernick. Stacy, I don't know, Cindy, how long was she part of the community? You know,
maybe the last year.
Okay. She passed away this week, and now instead of being on the healing list, she's on the Kaddish list. And it's very sad. Very sad. Okay. Getting onto the calendar. Right now, as we speak, the 60th anniversary March on Washington is happening in Washington. And I don't know, they're predicting 80,000 people to be in Washington taking part in the march. I'm pleased that Daughter Shoshana is there. A whole bunch of Women of Reformed Judaism, National Council of Jewish Women, ADL, I don't know, I'm just the RAC, the Religious Action Center. There's a strong Jewish presence at the march. Next calendar item, the current events class. I'm sure that I have failed to be properly clear. The current events class is now on indefinite extension until the world becomes boring and there's nothing else to talk about. So it's every other week, Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And I think September 6th,
noon.
Beginning at noon. I said that, right? Noon? I didn't say that. Beginning at noon on September 6th. And it's every 2 weeks ongoing. Okay? And we'll go with that, and that's fine. Friday, September 8th, not only is Shabbos services, but it is a congregational meeting. So obviously important. So that's Friday, September 8th. Saturday, September 9th is Slichot, the meditative service prior to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Apparently, reservations have to be made. I'm not sure what the reservations are all about, but they have to be made. So look in the Wilshire.
They're serving food beforehand, so I think they want to count.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. All right. So Slichot, Saturday evening, September 9th. On September 12th, just in case you don't think that the current events class is having anything new to do, the Israeli Supreme Court on September 12th begins consideration as to whether the most recent Knesset law dealing with reasonableness is in accord with Israeli basic law. That's September 12th. It's breaking right open again. And then, just because we have nothing else to do, Friday evening, September 15th, is Erev Rosh Hashanah. I can almost handle Slichot. I cannot handle Labor Day. I cannot handle Rosh Hashanah. I am being irascible. I am not happy that we are suddenly. I walked into Starbucks this week, pumpkin latte. We're getting ready for Halloween. Okay, fine. You can't help me. So that's the calendar that we have. Cindy, what do you have?
Today, some members of Sisterhood are going to see the 11:45 showing of Golda in Century City. I think Doris is going. Anyone who wants to join them, meet them at the box office at, Susie's going to, 11:15. So you get tickets, seating together, and then they'll have lunch afterwards. Just everyone's welcome to join them.
Super. Okay, that's terrific, and thank you very much. Thank you. Any other calendar events before we move on? Any other calendar? Now, checking in. Here is a question. Is there any topic dealing with Jewish matters that you might be interested in having a 2 or 3 or 4 week or 5 week hour session about? How is that for an open-ended question? I'm thinking about asking Susan whether we can do something else midweek, whatever, I don't know. And I just figured the only people who would know, that's you. So
We just email you some topics?
I'm sorry?
Could we just email you some topics?
That's what I'm asking. Yes, please. Just email me a topic. And, I'll see what's going on and I'll see how it fits in. Susan's in charge of all these matters. But if I have a couple of suggestions, I'll put them forward. And folks, if there are no suggestions, I'm not hurt. I'll just nap. So that's not a problem. But I just thought I'd invite you in. So that's checking in. Any other checking in going on in your lives? Things, Howard?
I thought it might be interesting that my family came back from the week-long Yiddishland camp outside of New York City, sponsored by the Workman Circle, and that the camp is going strong after 100 years. This is their most attendance, and it was a great thing, and all kinds of Yiddish classes and music and all camp activities, family activities. Really nice.
What was the average age, or was it a real mix?
There were a lot of young people and old people, including, I don't know, I wasn't there. Unfortunately, we used to go every year, but.
Really? That's great. That's great. Thank you. Any other checking in? Any other checking in? Okay, we can get started. I have been severely criticized for the Facebook item that I posted this past Thursday evening, which was available Friday morning, in which I talked about the Sedra. And apparently, don't you laugh, Risa, you're part of the guilty. Apparently, incessantly, yes, used the word pericope. And there was a lot of pushback. Pericope. And well, a pericope is a small self-contained unit that doesn't connect with other items in the context in which the pericope is found. So, believe me, I really did get these letters. Why do I have to know this? Oh, I don't know, but our Sedra has no narrative links. It is one pericope after another. That is to say, it is one small group of 2 or 3, maybe 4 sentences, period, and they follow one after the other. They don't connect with what went before. They don't connect with what came after. They are pericopes. Let's all say the word
Pericope.
pericopes.
I wanted to ask you, is the Pirkei Avot a set of pericopes?
That's a very interesting question. Does anyone else have a question?
I do.
No, Risa, not in its structure, because the whole thing is connected as a series of values, and they are united. And like in the first chapter, they are united. There is a coherence. Not every chapter coheres with every other chapter, but overall, no, I don't think so. I really don't think so. Okay, any other comments? We're gonna go. Steve.
I don't understand the question of why do we need to know this? I mean, you may not need to know the word pericope, but I think it's an important approach possibly to understanding the text. And it is traditionally a pericope, but on the other hand, there are so many of them. It's kind of like the 10 Commandments. I mean, I don't think you would say thou shalt not murder is a pericope, although some might.
I wouldn't. Because
it's all hazy.
Are a unit. They are a big unit, and they're part of a flowing narrative. They get to Mount Sinai.
They're in the middle of a narrative, I guess.
No, but they're connected to a narrative. It doesn't fit. These, as we see, and we'll get into in our Sedra Kitetse, they're freestanding. Let's just look at one. I don't want to be identified. Our rabbi talks about pericopes. What does your rabbi talk about? I don't know. Let's just look. Here's page 1324, Deuteronomy 22, pericope. Here it comes.
22 what?
Verse 5. Period. That's it. Verse 5. That's the item. Do you see, as you look at it, the preceding thing is if you see an animal overloaded and fallen on the road, be sure to pick it up. And the one after it is if you see a bird's nest, chase the mother away. And the statement in verse 5 is, a woman must not put on man's apparel, nor shall a man wear women's clothing, for whoever does these things is abhorrent to the eternal your God.
Which chapter is this? 5?
Chapter 22, verse 5.
I didn't hear that. Somebody spoke over you. Chapter what?
Okay. So nothing connects it to what preceded. Nothing connects it to what followed. And it is one of a whole series of short statements in the Sedra. I want to move past pericope And I want to actually look at what it's talking about. It says, a woman must not put on man's apparel, nor shall a man wear women's clothing. For whoever does these things is abhorrent to the eternal your God. That's a freestanding unit. What is its point? What's it saying? Why does it exist? Why does it exist?
It might mean that they should
Steve,
wear
I'm
weapons.
going to get to Purim. Give me a chance. Okay. What does it exist for? Why is it here? Okay, Howard.
It might have to do with that the woman shouldn't carry weapons.
A woman should not carry weapons. Now, you are using a different translation. I am going to ease into your translation. The Hebrew says, Lo yeh chli gever al isha. And it says a woman, the translation should not put on man's apparel.
The actual meaning of it.
Chli gever could be translated tools of a man. And that could end up being weapons. But in the context, I think weapons is a poor choice because if you look at a woman should not put on whatever, and a man should not put on women's clothing. Well, that's the parallelism. And I think that weapon screws that up. That's a technical description, screws that up. Okay, Kevin.
Okay, it must be in there because this was happening in the 40 years while they were in the desert.
And Kevin, one of the brilliant things about what you said is none of these laws exist without reference to the fact that the crime or the whatever that it's trying to ban already happens, right? So when you see, don't put on a woman's dress, people are putting on women's dresses. That is a reasonable assumption. You don't make a law unless it's to stop someone from doing something which they are already doing. Yes. Yes, and we're going to have to get into transvestites, transgender, and all that is going to happen right now. Steve?
But I think it's also, there's that, but there's also the matter of deception. You don't want to, deception. You don't want to appear as you are not. For example, it could be a way to set up for blackmailing someone or luring someone away in a manner where you could perform bad acts or theft or whatever, and it disrupts the interaction in an honest way with other people.
Okay, so in one way, putting on a woman's costume or putting on a man's clothing, reverse genders, is a way of deception which could open the door for nefarious activity, Steve, right? It could.
Yes.
It's a costume in one sense. It's not always a costume. It's a costume, a disguise. Let me go better disguise. It's a disguise which someone could put on. So a man could put on women's clothing so as to gain access to a women's gathering so as to commit a sexual offense. Okay? So yes, one thing is disguise. I'm going to do disguise. A disguise. Yes. And that a woman should not do the same. What about Yentl? Do you remember Yentl? Yentl? You know, part of the problem, I loved Yentl. I loved Yentl. I don't attack Barbara Streisand in Los Angeles. I do not do that. Okay, I loved Yentl, but she was violating Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5. That's, there you go. I mean, people are talking right now about this act violates the Constitution or that act violates the Constitution. You look at the Constitution, if it's explicit, you don't do it. The Torah says to Barbara Streisand, no. And then she had this fantastic movie. Okay, so there is that small problem. I see, okay, Marina. Oh, Marina, Paul,
Yes.
I'm sorry. My eyes, Mara and Harv, whoever they were actually had their hands up first, and I neglected that. Mara Harvey?
So I would argue that that verse 5 isn't freestanding, that it actually flows naturally from verse 4 and into verse 6, because verse 4 talks about an action relating to a male, and verse 6 talks about an action relating to a female. So it seems natural that between the two of them, you would have a verse talking about separating the two.
Okay, I'm going to ask, as a point of personal privilege, I don't know if I ever have personal privilege. I want to get off the pericope thing, and I want to get into the context. You're a poet. We could weave beautiful webs of connection almost everywhere. I think we could do that, Mara. But I'm going to fall, here I go, falling back on scholars. Real scholars, not me, view this as a widespread collection of independent statements. They can be woven together, but they really aren't. And I'm going to move on from that unless you want to all attack me. I'm very vulnerable. I'll cry, but let me go on. Marina.
I wonder if women would put on men's clothes, as in the movie, but over the centuries, to be able to perform the work of men, like military service. We can take Joan d'Arc. There were examples of women fighting in the Napoleonic Wars on behalf of Russia, dressed as men. Could it have been that women wanted to fight or to perform some of the traditionally male duties during the wandering, and would dress as men? So it's not only a perversion, it may also be a devotion that made them change clothes.
That is great. We have, by the way, and I'm always open to correction on that. I'm trying to remember the judge, Deborah. I don't think, Tamara's online, I don't think there's any reference to her putting on male garments to lead the people into war. And Jeanne d'Arc is a fine example to the contrary. She apparently did. And there is more. Yentl actually offers the opportunity to say, Yentl dressed as a man so she could perform the men's mitzvot also, to study and to do whatever it is that men do. And that she dressed that way to get into a man's world for religious and spiritual purposes, which is what you're saying. And I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, that is certainly, we use the English word. I don't even know how to say it in Hebrew, but we have a variety of reasons to pass as something which we are not. And some of the reasons are very positive. And yes, thank you for that. Any other comments? Because I want to make certain that we end up screaming and yelling in the next 2 or 3 minutes. That's actually in my minutes. You will end up screaming and yelling. Okay, do we have any other? Okay, I see 2. I see Rebecca, then Merle.
I remember with joy, with great joy, when I could finally wear pants to school. Because I didn't have to worry about anybody looking at my dress or, having unprotected knees if I fell down.
I have a feeling we've all of a sudden gotten into stuff that I don't want to think about. But yeah, I mean, the pants were men's clothing, and then they became slacks, and they became something else and something else. And I understand that. Could I toss in, Rebecca, that it goes 2 ways? And in today's world, we see it. That is to say, men putting on women's clothing because they find it more attractive or more comfortable. We have a lot here. The screaming and stone throwing should begin any minute. We have examples of cisgender males. I learned that, CIS, you know that one? Cisgender, it means that your body and your gender identity are the same. Cisgender males who will put on dresses because they find the garments attractive or comfortable. Or actually, they want to experiment with what that feels like and to be seen as a cisgender male in women's clothing. So yes, thank you. Yes. And who was that? Oh, Merle, right? Merle?
Yeah, so I've been criticized because I can't wear dresses or skirts and tops because a surgeon butchered the surgery and left me where I have to wear leggings. And when I go to temple or I go someplace that has to be dressy, people will make comments.
They'll make comments?
Oh, people have been, I mean, this was 9 years ago, but I've adjusted my life to it, to the point where we have Gabby's bat mitzvah in a few weeks, our granddaughter. And somebody said to me, well, I hope you're not going to wear leggings to the party.
Right.
At which point I was with our daughter, and she looked at the woman. She said, what business is it of yours what my mother wears to her party? This is what she has to wear to keep her structure together, because this, but why do we have to defend ourselves when we get criticized? The same thing with you having been criticized for a word you used, which I thought watching it made a lot of sense to me. I had to look it up because at first I didn't know what it was. But once I understood what it was, I thought, this makes a lot of sense.
I'm sorry, Merle, could you repeat that again? What I said, how were you describing it?
When I looked it up and saw what it was, it made sense to me.
Okay.
Why people have to criticize.
I hear it so infrequently that's a blessing. Fern, comment. You just mentioned that as an attorney.
Yeah, when I started to practice law, we were prohibited from wearing pantsuits to court, women.
Prohibited.
yes, it was considered male attire, and it was considered disrespectful to the court, and we would be shut down, moved out of a hearing.
That has changed now?
Wow.
Has generally changed, although it's certainly in California, though I understand there are places where that is still the case.
This is fascinating. Okay, I see Risa, I see Kevin, then I have to pursue because I am really waiting to make you yell at me. Go ahead. Risa?
Yeah, it's me. Hi.
Oh, hi, Maya.
I have lots of issues that I'd like to discuss with you after the class, but my comment that I do want to make is that you talk about cisgendered people randomly wearing clothes that belong to another gender as if human beings are not the ones that just decided that clothes have to be gendered. I don't see how it's such a huge deal that people just want to wear clothing. It's just cotton. I don't know why we've assigned genders to fabrics.
The same reason we attach gender to words or anything else, it's a symbol.
And then Maya's question is what makes it a symbol? That's our choice, right? God, Maya is taking me for a walk after our class. I have a feeling it's going to be a very intense walk. Okay. And let me go on and say, oh, Kevin. Yes, Kevin. Yes.
Okay, so it says these things is abhorrent to your God. I guess the question is there a punishment for being abhorrent to your God? And whose interpretation was that as being abhorrent? Is that God saying it's abhorrent, or is it the rabbis writing that in there saying that it's abhorrent?
Let me just be clear. This is way before there were rabbis. I know that you want to have rabbis always in human history, and I appreciate that. But then the rabbis are, I don't know, Ezra, Second Temple, and beyond. So this stuff was done by scribes or whatever. The word abhorrent doesn't carry a necessary specific punishment. And the Torah attitude about God's response to our behavior is that let me put it in modern language, we're going to pay a price. I'm not sure what it is, but you're going to pay a price for doing something really bad. And the word abhorrent also empowers the authorities to stop it. Since it says it's abhorrent in the text, then the civil authorities could say, you're not allowed to do that, it's abhorrent. So it empowers civil authorities to create punishments. But Kevin, I'm not aware of a specific punishment if a man wears women's clothing, women wears men's clothing. Okay, I am going to take the word though and answer Steve. Steve, by the way, you notice I can still remember. Steve had a question about Purim. And you know that on Purim, cross-dressing is big. Okay? Guys are looking like Vashti and the women are looking like Ahasuerus or Haman Boo. That happens. So what's the exception? That's the word. The rabbis take the word abhorrent and say that if you're wearing another gender's clothing in the standard, Maya, I heard you, in the standard of the day, which they called women's or men's clothing, and your purpose is to celebrate Purim, that's not abhorrent. So it's the wearing of clothing for abhorrent purposes. That's how the rabbis play this. Okay.
So
Steve?
theater is also okay? Costumes
Yes,
for
yes, yes, and yes. So they're going to what in Hebrew we'd call kavanah, intention. What's the intention? What's the purpose? If the purpose is to do a show, do a show. If the purpose is to get into a situation in which you can seduce a person of the opposite gender, that's abhorrent. Kevin? Okay? But that is the big word. And let me clarify. Okay, Susie, a quickie, then we're going on. Go ahead, please, Susie.
You're muted, Susie.
Susie, you're muted. Susie, you're muted. I can't hear a word, but I'm sure she's speaking pearls of wisdom. Susie, you're muted.
Okay, not now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I have a very good friend who's gay, very good friend. If she were sitting here right now, plus she's converted to Judaism, if she were sitting here right now, she would be the screamer and the yeller. Because my heart, I'm very angry with this number 5. Very angry about it. I think it is the most narrow-minded, outdated, abhorrent suggestion in the Torah. That's it.
You have any strong opinions about this?
It's just, how does a gay person handle this?
Wait, I now.
Does a transgender person handle this if they're Jewish?
I am now going to add another piece so that you can relax.
Thank you.
Rashi, please. Rashi taught that a man putting on women's clothing also includes forbidding a man from shaving his genitals and his armpits so that he looks more like a woman. Okay, I'm watching Susie. She has not exploded, which I think, you remember Charlie, the chocolate?
I'm holding it in. My blood pressure is up to 5,000.
The kid who became a blueberry and then popped. Yeah, Willy Wonka. So, yeah, okay. So we're going to go on. Rabbis read this cross-dressing that leads to an abomination forbidden. By the way, this is a reverse approval for Barbara Streisand. She really didn't do it for evil purposes, so maybe it wasn't abhorrent. Now,
But the head of the yeshiva would have said it was an evil purpose.
yeah, but he's dead. Okay. I want to read this because I am sitting alone in a room with a closed door. The cat isn't even in here. My granddaughter and wife are in another room. As I state to you, Ibn Ezra says, women should understand women were created only to have children.
Oh, good God.
I like Ibn Ezra. He's one of the absolute greats, but I would never quote this Ibn Ezra if I were physically exposed to harm. Okay. That's what Ibn Ezra says. Folks, women should understand they were made to have children. Only that. Leave the business of studying in the yeshiva. Leave the business of gender dysphoria. Well, I remembered the word. Okay. Know your place in creation, and it isn't wearing men's clothing. So that's another way to understand this. I see the regulars, but are there anyone else? I do see Steve and fuming Susie. Anyone else? I see Tamara. Tamara, would you please speak and save me because I am in.
Yeah, but for Ibn Ezra, before he says this, he says this refers to wearing a war implement. The idea is that women should not go to war because they were created to have children. So it's almost for Ibn Ezra, it's more women should not be drafted into the army. Whereas for the others, it's more about clothing.
Oh, you want to give Ibn Ezra a pass. Okay, yes, it does say.
No, I don't. I just want to contextualize it, that he does understand, as most people of his time, and most in our time still, assumes there are different biological gender roles, and it's a problem. And I'm with Susie on that. But it has been a cultural phenomenon, with some exception, for millennia.
Yes, indeed. And I'm not done. Ibn Ezra also stated, basically, that God abominates anyone who changes the natural order. But Susie, stop it! We're going to have to call
I'm
911.
not screaming. I'm not screaming.
Okay.
Who defines
911 for poor Susie. So Ibn Ezra, a creature of his day, views male, female, men's clothing, women's clothing as part of God's ordained natural order. And if you mess with the natural order, you are messing with God's will. Folks, when you ask where the fundamentalists of our day got their perspectives, not just for Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra reflects the world within which he lived, taught, and studied. And you have to know that it's not just a casual wrong-headedness in the 21st century. These perspectives are embedded in religious thought, in some ways of approaching biology and legal thought, to remove this kind of perspective, I don't know, is going to take many generations. And people are going to have to live with, how do I understand my scripture, my priest, minister, and rabbi's teachings over the past 2,000 years and move on to a different perspective? It isn't just a question of, that's obviously wrong, let's move on. This stuff is embedded in literature, in philosophy, in religion, in law, in many places. And it's going to be a long time before we remove it. Comment before I move on.
Yep, I have one. And I thank Rabbi Ashkenazi for putting that in context, because otherwise I would wonder why people even listen to scholars. It seems to me that throughout the Torah and the rest of the Bible, there are many, many examples of women being more than this little defined role. And I don't understand why somehow that all gets eaten up by one or two stupid statements.
I'm going to let that stand. There's more to go on with. Abarbanel, another great commentator, noted that in his day, women put on men's clothing in order to secretly go out and consort with a man, not her husband. Yeah, so I see Natalie shaking her head. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know what you're saying, but you're happy and shaking your head. And on a day like today, I'll take that. That's fine.
I think that's what this a lot is about. That is what, as I've been sitting here and listening, and we also have to remember how long ago this was written. You can't possibly talk about our values today with what was written so many years ago. But to me, about the war, that sounded very interesting. But I think underlying, underneath it all, is exactly this thing that we don't want to change our sexual orientations, that there's something evil about that. And that is how I read it.
Thank you. One of us here on this family conversation just published a book dealing with disruptions. I'm not pushing the book. I am still living that world. Okay. Men wearing women's clothing, women wearing men's clothing are still viewed in the world today as taking away from us the comfort of being able to look at a person's clothing and know their gender. It's a disruption. And believe me, I am saying a necessary disruption. I'm trying to explain why some people go wild about it. It is a disruption. Disruption in the way we look at the world, a worthy and necessary disruption, but it isn't just a question of disagreement. It's more than that. And I want to add this. Risa and I know people in this real world who use the changing of the style of dressing as a means of testing out their own sexual identity. This also happens, that sometimes people viewed biologically as men will put on women's clothing, the reverse also true, just to see what it feels like because they're not certain of their gender identity, and they put on this clothing as a step in trying to understand who they really are. And once again, I'm going to use the word necessary as a necessary step in understanding who they are. The Torah identifies male, female on the basis of body and gender roles, regardless of whether the person under consideration identifies with that assignment. Does that make sense here? That actually is kind of important. Torah doesn't ask ever whether the person who is assigned because of external factors a gender identity, in fact, wants that assignment. Are we okay? Did that make sense? Okay, Eric? You're muted.
Excuse me, didn't the Israelite society wants to differentiate themselves from other cultures? Maybe other cultures did this cross-dressing and everything, and they wanted to be apart from the cultures of the strangers.
And I think that you've offered a very important reminder that part of what the Torah is doing is trying to differentiate the Israelite culture from the culture of surrounding peoples. The answer, Eric, yes, absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to jump.
Effie has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Effie?
Yes. I would say that years ago, women wearing pants was cross-dressing, but it's become so popular now that I don't think pants are no longer just a male dress. I think it's now a female dress as well as a male dress.
And I'm going to toss in the fact that in high culture, what is it, haute couture? The designers of clothing have basically abandoned male, female categories of clothing. We get the New York Times fashion book, that we get the Sunday Times, and then every once in a while this big fashion thing. I look at it and say, oh, there's a lot of news today. No, it's all about fashion. It's in there. And I look at it because some of the stuff is quite beautiful, and some of it is, I need a laugh. So I look at some of it. You look at how designers are designing, and the whole binary system of male, female is gone. You look at what men are wearing on the runways of fashion shows. Are they men? Are they women? And why would you assume clothing will tell you the truth? Very, very interesting. Okay, we're running near the end, and I only have 43 other pages of examples. I need to get to one. Merle?
I was just going to say that in today's society, I think we have to be more accepting of people, and I'm thinking of what you said in your last comment. We have to be more accepting of what people are experimenting with in their own lives. I mean, we've got my son-in-law, nephew we don't know what he is. We don't know if he's gay. We don't know if he's bi. We don't know if he's trans. He's going through this stage with his life. And he sat down with everyone in the family. Mostly, we don't see him very often, even though they live here. He sat down with the whole family a few weeks ago to explain himself in whatever way he could. And all Gabby said to him, he asked Gabby, is it okay if I wear my hair in a ponytail and wear a dress to your bat mitzvah? And she said, as long as it's a nice dress, I don't care what you wear, just be there. And I think that that's where we have to be in society, is just allow people to be who they are. And if they need to experiment, let them experiment, as long as they don't hurt themselves.
Good for you, Meryl.
That, I come from a family with a lot of gays, lesbians, whatever, and they're family, and we just let them be whoever they are. That's all that's important to us. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. No, that's a superb statement. Superb is a value judgment. I'll transfer that. That's a statement with which I totally agree. Okay, so that doesn't, it is there. I want to point out just at the end of today, the Torah does not deal with gender fluidity. It deals with binary male, female. The Talmud, however, deals with, at the very least, a third gender. And I'm really glad to have this happen at 9:56. That was not my intention. It was early in my notes, but I have a whole bunch. The Talmud speaks of the tum, T-U-M, and androgynous. The tum and androgynous, it's not clear whether the rabbis in the Talmud views these as third gender, fourth gender, or whether tum and androgynous were clustered as third gender. And it deals with people who were born biologically with varied equipment. And they were aware that not everyone is born with the same biological equipment. And they wanted a place for them. The rabbis in the Talmud went so far as to say, when Torah speaks of speak to your sons, speak to your daughters, it's talking to binary specifics, that's fine. But here's where the rabbis in the Talmud, unbelievable to my ears, when the rabbis in the Talmud say, when the Torah says, speak to your children, without saying boys, girls, whatever, sons, daughters, they are including tum and androgynous. So the rabbis in the Talmud actually found a way to bring at least a third generation within the orbit of halakha. That's why I mentioned this. The rabbis found a way to specifically include at least third gender in the Jewish legal system. And to make that point then obvious, to make them a part of the Jewish people. The rabbis in the Talmud say, and I quote, but they are Israel. That's no small matter. Okay? That's no small matter. And folks, I am pleased to welcome Mitch Dorf, who is here to give to give us our Elul preparation, and then we're going to go to Kaddish. Hi, Mitch.
Everyone. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I'm going to take us a couple of minutes, Rabbi. I have something. Remember for those of you who were here last week, I talked about my son and I and my shofar, and how they're kind of in tune. And well, here's his. So you can see the difference in the size, right? So I told a story last night. It's nice sharing it again. In 2008, we purchased this one at the Shuk in Jerusalem. This was my son's. And I got this one years before that. And we played the first time we ever played together was at the Slichot service before 2008's Rosh Hashanah. And Max and I had never blown together And we went there, and we thought there was going to be a lot of people, a chauffeur choir, and it was just the two of us. And I thought it was going to be one blast. But I looked at the text, and I forgot there's a whole 30 calls. And I'm with Max, who's 2008. He's 9 years old. And so I said to Max, dude, we got a little work ahead of us. When Cantor Gurney says Tekiah, just hold your note. And we said, Shavarim, play the 3, and then Teruah, do the 9. Got it? Got it. Right? So Cantor Gurney calls us up, Tekiah, and we play this chord, which some of you have heard. I looked at Cantor Gurney, looks at me, and I was like, what was that? Shvarim Teruah. Ba 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 ba. Next one, ba 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 ba. We're making the chord. We go through the 30 calls. Rabbi Cantor Gurney comes over, embraces us, whispers in my ear, "You guys are hired." And we've been playing.
That's how you got into doing it on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
That's how it happened. It happened at Slichot in 2008. So,
Rich, excuse me. Does that mean that one should be careful about where one blows one's own horn?
like I'm doing right now. So, for those who have or have not, mine has this tone. Max's is a little shorter and has this tone. And this is like a jet engine. This one is like powerful. It's an amazing instrument. Now let's see if I can do this. If you play them together,
beautiful.
They make that chord sound. Or his is a third. I can't play the full thing, but I can play the one note together, and that's what they sound like. So you have to come to Rosh Hashanah or Slichot services if you want to hear the whole 30 or 90 blasts. So today, I'll tell you what, last week we did mine. This week we're going to use Max's, so you hear a little bit of the high piercing sound. So Rabbi, if you'd like to call the Tekiah, Shvarim Teruah Tekiah?
Tekiah!
Do Shvarim Teruah?
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Oh, you didn't hear it?
No.
Did you hear it?
Yes.
Shvarim Teruah.
It blew it out.
Shvarim Teruah. Okay, now give us a Tekiah. Am I the only one not hearing it?
I'm not.
No, you're not the only one.
Not hearing it, Mitch. I don't know what it is.
If you turn on original sound, just in the upper left.
On my iPad, where is that? Oh, that's too bad. Oh, that means I get to do it all over again. Great. Let's see here. Original sound. I know. So funny. Ah, here we go. See if this works. All right.
Yeah. Yes.
Once again.
Let's do the thing quickly. Tekiah. Shvarim Teruah. And now, David's great moment. Tekiah.
Everyone. I will not see you next weekend, but in 2 weeks, we'll see you, and then we'll see you at Slichot, and hopefully at Rosh Hashanah.
What did you say about next week? Next week?
I will not be around, so you'll have to.
Okay, next week, but a week after, yes.
Week after, yes, and then that night is Slichot at Ermis.
You're great. Thank you. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Nice seeing you all.
Thank you. And now I'm moving to Kaddish. Those who have passed away during the past month: Max Aronson, Rachel Blackman, Rachel Bat Naftali V'Tzipora, Derek Brown, William Friedkin, Jim Kosick, Sarah Rose Lafer, Helen Mayer, Robert Bob Miller, George Morgan, Enid Reeser, Jerome Jerry Schwartz, Joan Shafran, Patsy Sultan, Gerald Norman Tuck, Stacy Wernick. Yortzeits that have occurred during the past week: Milton Abrams, Deborah Agam, Robert Alexander Yaakov Aloni, Axel Anderson, Ann Baker, Abraham Barman, Stephen Bartmasser, William Bernstein, Norton Binnenfeld, Leslie Bloom, Elaine Blumenfeld, Marjorie Ann Boville, Sanford Brandt, Ned Browdy, Lee Burns, Corinne Cohen, Marilyn Cohan, Milton Cole, Phyllis Copen, Charles Solomon Denkert, Sidney Diamond, Bart Feldmar, Dion Rose Fenning, Reva Fields, Norman Fields, Pauline Foreman, Mig Freudenthal, Thelma Freed, Harold Garber, Leon Ginsberg, Maxwell Alexander Gray, Nicole Ann Harrow, Robert Hazlett, Margaret Herskovitz, Dana Inkelis, Max Eisenberg, Moses Israel, Milton Kaplan, Tony Karp, Irvin Knight, Hugo Cran, Leah Lask, Carrie Levitt, Stephen Litt, Rosalind Leon, Evelyn Leons, Elliot Maltzman, Lou Markman, Jack Morton, Matloff, Pauline Menon, Betty Miller, Shirley Orenstein, Soretta Portnoy, Herta Roberts, Marilyn Roberts, and Wesley Ralston, Alvin Rosenthal, J. Armin Roth, Miriam Chilson Rothstein, Zelda Rubin, Alvin Saltzman, Sheldon Sanders, Albert Schildkraut, Fanny Groban Schwartz, Sam Schwartz, Bertram Schwimmer, Morris Shapiro, Roder Shrelo, Parata Sarati, Mark Silver, Jacob Silverstein, Lawrence Snyder, Saul Soller, Scott Srayberg, Phyllis Steinberg, Betty Strauss, Gabina Sussman, Sue Temple, Mildred Union, Dorothy Irma Weinberger, Jean Whitney, Adele Israel Zales, Sheldon Zane. If there are other names to be mentioned at this time, please speak those names aloud. If I have mispronounced the name, please speak the names for correction. We bear in mind also the names of those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of the state of Israel, those who died through senseless acts of terror, those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. And we are still, of course, deeply grieving for all those who were killed in Maui. Together. Yitkadal, V'yitkadash, Le'rabah, V'alma, Tivrach Yiruteh, V'amlich Malchuteh, V'chayechon Uvyomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Karib, V'imru Amen. Yehei Rabba Bavarach, V'lalot Le'olei Almaya, Yitbarach Yishtabach V'yitba'ar V'yitramam Aseh, Yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Kudish Richu Le'ela Min Kol Berachata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechamata Damiran V'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shmaya V'chayim Alein V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Imromav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May God who makes peace in the high places Make peace in our hearts. Make peace in our homes. Make peace in the household of Israel. Make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say, Amen. I have to go read all the chat stuff. We don't usually get to 26. Yeah, Tamara and Steve Miller about Tumtum and Androgynous. I'm going to refer you to the chapter in my new book entitled, that chapter is entitled, what is that chapter entitled? It is a glorious chapter dealing with sexual identity disruption in the Talmud. And in that chapter, it views Tumtum and Androgynous as perhaps synonymous. So it's not the androgyny that's in the Google. You have to read the chapter. I based my comments on that chapter in the book. Risa.
I want to see if people might be interested in that class you're talking about, to be each time a chapter in that book.
I'm sorry, you have to send an email.
No fingers.
Oh, Rabbi.
Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
You too.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Shabbat shalom,
shalom.
everyone.